Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the very last episode of World Talk with myself, Hysterics, Nelson, and of course, IWillDominate on his own channel. Every single time the intro comes through, I have to let you know where you're putting your space, putting your feet on the ground. Gentlemen, welcome back because, today is, for me, a very sad day. I'm brooding a little bit. And Dom, I think, as someone who's been co-streaming LPL all year, maybe you're a little bit sad as well, considering that we do not have an LPL representative in finals or even a chance to win the championship for the first time since 2018 or 2017, excuse me.
2017.
God,
yeah, no, it's tough. I mean, I think this was definitely a different experience as someone who follows LPL, because normally when you get to Worlds, you end up in a meta where at least like engaged supports are like a core piece. I mean, some people will have counters. Like, for example, last year, some people were pulling out Zillion support into like some of the engaged counters, but it's very rare where like engaged picks are not at the not a core part of the meta. And I feel like that was something that actually ended up hurting LPL teams a lot. Sure. Because when you think of LPL supports, Ming, Mako, these types of guys, like they're gods on Nautilus, like Leona, like that's really where they make their money. And it just felt like the fact that they couldn't actually get through lane on many of these picks, and they didn't have the ability to like kill people over and over again, I think that ended up hurting LPL quite a bit.
Nelson, what stung you the most? Because, again, you've been involved with LPL in the past. I know you're someone who still watches heavily. I know you were favoring LPL as well. People in last week's comments were like, dude, Nelson loves LPL a lot. How badly was it for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would say the meta didn't match up with many other teams. I think many of, even the great supports, like Ming, I think especially Ming, he had a good team, but I would say he didn't have the correct AD carry for this type of meta where you need to play like more oppressive supports in lane. And I mean, Gala is more of like someone who plays on his own, and then you can leave him like 1v2 while you do something else, and it doesn't look like to be the case in this, like the meta in semifinals at least, or in the playoffs.
It's really hard, especially when a lot of the voices, just not only, you guys make a really good point about support engage, but like Ming is a huge voice in RNG. I know Mako as well takes a portion of that, if I'm not correct in saying, Nelson. I know as well, we look at people like Mark in the past. Missing as well has become like a bit of a stronger voice for JDG. When you don't have them on engage, when you don't have them on setup, it does feel, as agreeing with you guys, that there is just not that same avenue to play through. And it's sad, especially since, the development we saw in the summer split, and we saw our 4 seeds looking hell strong. To get this result in the end, even though JDG getting to semis is great, Nelson, I think it is still a bit of a shame considering that, we were saying that JDG were a top 3 coming into this tournament.
I mean, I think they're still top 3 because looks like the favorites are.
You think that was the real finals? You think that was the real finals and semis?
I mean, it could be, right? It could be like JDG, T1, and DRX are like top 3 in terms of this tournament, but I feel like I would say in the playoffs or the meta in the playoffs, it's just that Alpha didn't have the better lanes or the better combinations compared to the Korean teams, because I think at least top side of the map, Alpha has shown to still be stronger, but it looks like it didn't matter this split. And all I can say is, I mean, there's a good and a bad side, right? The bad side is there are no LPL teams who made it to the finals. But the good thing is that I would like to let Dom know that Flondra is the only Chinese top laner to have ever won Worlds.
Okay. Is that a good thing? I mean, okay, all right.
I guess it is a good thing. Hey, Dom, what are your thoughts overall on the performance? I know, again, you did put JDG's winning Worlds out with your pick'em, so unfortunately you're out with the rest of us. But
yep.
Overall in their performance, counting all 4 seeds, where do you kind of put it at? Like better than expected, worse than expected, or about hitting the mark of where you came into the tournament?
I mean, I think JDG played as I expected them to. I think that like the way JDG played, if teams weren't playing like at their best, so for example, like the T1 from summer split in LCK, I don't think that like JDG would have lost that team. I think T1 has leveled up. Sure. I think they've gotten a lot better. Specifically, like their bot lane is just a point of strength, whereas before it felt like that was like the point of weakness within the team. And if you even just see how T1 is playing, they pretty much are like, even though Zeus is playing carries and like sometimes they'll help them in situations where they need to, they want to just make sure that their bot lane is always stable, and their bot lane's like obviously doing really well in this tournament. I think JDG played as I expected. I mean, I think the other 3 teams like underperformed compared to my expectations. Maybe not RNG. I think RNG is a team that, you know, they didn't look right in all of summer to me. They didn't look like the same team.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say EDG and Top mainly underperformed. I think EDG. I mean, specifically Scout. I was really surprised by his performance. I've never seen Scout be that unstable as a player. Like generally, he's somebody who's solid. He's somebody you can rely on. He's one of like the players that you feel like most comfortable in when they go internationally, or just when they represent their own team, even within the LPL. And I just felt like Scout had a really, really weird I mean, he just had really uncharacteristic mistakes. Like, he's normally not the guy that has game-losing mistakes. And if you play a 5-game series and you have game-losing mistakes in 2 of the games, like, that's really rough. So, yeah, then Top Esports, I was really surprised they weren't able to make it out of groups. Like, looking at their team, I'm just so surprised that they weren't good enough to make it out of groups. I feel like they had a very weird read of what their strengths were in relation to other teams. I was expecting them to have more of, like, the Zika approach, where they're, like, trying to get Silas Akali matchups, like even potentially bad matchups for Knight. So the fact that like Knight was just playing Azir and then like Tien was, you know, playing Vi and he wasn't really affecting the map early. I don't know. I thought it was really strange considering like how they had all their success. It felt like they like almost forgot who they were at this World Championship. So I would say EDG and EDG and Top Esports underperformed, and like RNG and JDG performed up to my expectations.
Which is a nice touch. At least we got 50-50. And I will say the thematic discussion we had a couple of episodes, about Top Esports was a really nice one when we talked about them not kind of playing their own identity. It's a nice way to finish out because 4 teams now out. LPL not in the finals again. We said the first time since 2017. And it feels a little bit strange having an LCK final once again. We can talk about that in a little bit. But first I wanted to round out LPL, give it its nice little send-off. With these 4 teams at Worlds that we have, I want each of you in a fun little exercise to build me, I guess, a super team. It can be including these teams. It can be including elements that didn't make it into Worlds as well. Nelson, I want you to start. Give me top, jungle, mids, 80 carry support in that order of now your team after watching these teams at Worlds. Maybe if you had the power to be a manager, you know, like LPL manager for next year, what would you do?
I mean, for top lane, I would take Xiao.
You better not say Flandre. You
No,
better not say Flandre.
waiting.
No.
You
Like-
said shower
I
instead.
took
That's
Xiao.
got to...
I
All
took
right,
Xiao.
okay, thank God.
I took Xiao in the top lane. Yeah, jungle is hard, yeah, because most junglers are very unstable. So I'll skip jungle for now. For mid lane,
What do you can't
no,
skip it.
I'll pick it last. I'll think about it.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Mid,
Okay.
for mid, I'll take Rookie, and then my bot lane is a Viper and Ming. So I mean, it looks like it has to be like either JJ or Tien. So you just have to pick one.
Okay.
Like
Let's...
maybe you can even have both. You know, Tien for a regular split,
Yeah?
and when you go international, you just
Something.
swap the junglers.
Okay. I like it, Nelson. It's a good touch. Dom, you're up.
All right, my top 5. Okay, I'm going Bin top lane with
Oh.
Wei once again. So I'm going the RNG top side from MSI. My
Yep.
mid laner is also going to be Rookie. I think Rookie is just too good. And then I'm going to take Viper as AD. And my support is going to be Missing. I'm going to take Missing. I think he's more versatile than Ming. I think Ming got exposed super hard at this international tournament.
Yeah.
Where he just simply could not, like, he does not have an answer. If you pick like a range support and a range support is strong and you can't play engage to it, he doesn't have an answer. He can't like enchanter counter poke like a mage bot laner. So I think that's like the reason why I would take somebody who I believe is more versatile as a support.
I mean, I
surprised-
think he can, but it's just that maybe he just doesn't have Uzi anymore. So, because when he had
Sure.
Uzi, he did play a lot of range supports.
True, he did. Played an extra supportive style. I was going to say, I'm surprised both of you don't have 369 up there as well. 369 is someone who, man, he deserves the accolades. You know, put him with Kanavi again and maybe change around the bottom side, see what happens. But then again, he never visited bottom side, so I'm not sure if I can put that all on hope and Missing.
Yeah, I think this would have
Anyway.
been a really, really insane meta for Bin. I think if Bin was at Worlds, he would be like just absolutely smurfing. I mean, he was essentially a better version of Breathe during regular split in LPL. So then you put him now on those same champions internationally. I mean, that's how he made his money, right? Like he's the
True.
Jax player, the Fiora player, the Camille player. Like that's him. So I would love to see that.
God, I feel like as well, like the comparison between Bin and Bree's been going on all year, but it does kind of weigh towards Bin comparatively with what we saw in the last World Championship and what we've seen internationally from Bin. I'm going to move on because that's LPL done and dusted. Again, I like the answers, gentlemen. But I want to run into a couple of surprises to finish off because this is our last episode. It's been a nice 4, I think, so far. We need to look at the most surprising teams once and for all, because I think this Worlds has kind of been surprising. We've gotten LCK versus LCK, as we said in the final. We have had LCK dominance with all 4 seeds running out into the best of 5s. Dom, if you want to start, your most surprising team, I know we did ask this earlier on, but maybe you can give the same answer or refresh our memory.
Well, I mean, I think that like T1 was really surprising, but I guess the most surprising team has to be DRX. I mean, the first team to ever go from play-ins to regular split, and even from talking to people or to World Finals, and even from talking to people that like watched every single game of them in regular split, like they almost had less faith than the rest of us. They had like horrible amounts of faith. They pretty much said they were like the worst Korean team. You know, they thought that they would lose in quarterfinals, and these are people that watched a ton of DRX. So even compared to like experts within the LCK, their mentality, I think they massively overperformed expectations. Sure. So to me, I have to go DRX. I mean, they were a 4th seed, which means like even within their own, like even though they didn't actually make semifinals, they lost in quarterfinals. But like, let's say a 4th seed means you're the 4th best. That means you would go out in semifinals generally in your own region. They didn't go out in semifinals here. They made it to World Finals. That's just crazy. Yeah, all in all.
Had to win a best of 5 in their own region to get to Worlds as well. Like
do you know what's the difference? Because they had a coach who coached in LCS. You know, LCS is the hardest region.
Oh, true.
Yep. Faker said it was. Hey, Faker, you know, implied it's the best, man. That's what the word going around is. So, I now believe that. So that's the most surprising team. I want to talk about maybe most surprising champion or maybe strongest. Nelson, you didn't actually get to answer surprising team. So before I cut to the chase, do you have any difference from T1 or DRX? Because they feel like the main 2 right now.
Yeah, I mean, I would say Gen G, but more in a disappointing way because I thought they would have like more tricks up their sleeves. But
yeah,
to be honest, I think they play very similar to like the traditional Korean teams where there's many things or like stuff like repeat ganks which catch them out easily. And these are things which you need like a lot of experience to adapt to, you know. So I would say T1 is kind of a young team, and I believe they got molded at MSI this year. And then DRX, all the players or many of the players there have experience in like LPL as well. So I would say, yeah, most surprising is Gen G for me.
It's an interesting answer again. Yeah, a little bit disappointing, and in group stage, there's a lot of concern. Now, Nelson, before, you know, I cut you off before, so I apologize. Now tell me strongest pick, because there's been a lot of talk of meta and slight tweaks and changes throughout Worlds. I mean, I thought Maokai was going to be a mainstay presence, but we've moved away from that completely. Is there a pick that sits on top of your mind? It can be like strongest, or it can be the one that was hyped up and kind of crapped out a bit. Your choice.
I mean, I would say, I believe before Worlds, or when the group's draw was made, I was making a tweet that, yeah, the meta would be like Graves and Kindred, just to make fun of Yankos. And it looks like it's back to like Graves, Kindred meta, right? And in the past, people would play Nilly, but I think they realized that Nilly is such a bad champion. Yeah, and for Kindred, it's like, because there are so many combinations of Kindred plus top laner, like Kindred plus like Fiora, Jax, or Kindred plus Ornn, they're all very good, strong combos, and that's why. And I think like many of the poke champs are kind of out of the meta. Unless you play a really good Jace, then yeah, I think Kindred is kind of a power pick right now.
Dom, is there a pick you want to highlight on, or one that's been strong throughout all Worlds for you?
Well, I mean, I think the one that has been helping DRX probably the most is the Heimerdinger, because even if they're not playing it, it feels like they're drawing the ban on Heimerdinger pretty frequently. And I just think that like support has just been terrorizing people since the group stage. So I guess that would be the pick that I think is really shaping the game. And I think it's a champion that's been sleeper for a while. I don't know if people remember Zazel, the former support of Cloud9. He's now a coach of the main team. He's like a positional coach for Sven, and he randomly started playing solo queue again after like not playing much for a year, and he got top 10, 1400 LP on NA playing Heimer support in like 190 games or like 210 games, something like ridiculous. He was just like smurfing on everyone with Heimerdinger, and every time I played against it, I'm like, is NA just that bad, or is this pick OP? And then I saw Barrel playing it at Worlds, and the lane phases looked the same as they looked in my games in solo queue, and I was like, wait a second, this champion's just been sleeper OP for a while, and no one knew. So I think Barrel being able to pull it out, and just I mean, the amount of lane control you get with it, obviously it's high risk, high reward. If you ever lose control of the lane, you're just doomed with Heimer. But the fact that when you play it as a support, like, you're able to play so aggressively in a competitive game when you can path around the lane, or you can make sure that you're not in a situation where you are losing that lane control. It's a lot easier to just coordinate those types of things. I feel like it's a super strong pick. So that's going to be my pick. I'm going to go the Heimerdinger for Barrel.
Hell yeah. That's kind of based as well. I mean, again, for DRX, I'm hoping maybe it pops out in the grand finals. I want to do a bit of a recap because semifinals was pretty interesting considering, yeah, there's only 4-game series, but it went different ways than we kind of expected, or at least, you know, some of us here on the desk expected. Let's start with the top side, JDG versus T1 in the semis. I want to start with JDG's performance because I feel like Jing Dong were a team coming in that we thought, okay, their strength in top side, you know, jungle as well has been kind of taking over. But for T1, who was it who mentioned it before? Dom, was it you who started off with Goomer and Carrier? Because T1's bottom lane, I feel like, you know, severely gapped this series and kind of closed it out in 1 or 2 games at least.
Yeah, they were much more stable. The bot lane was definitely a point of strength. I think FAKER might have been like the difference maker. I think that over the course of the tournament, people like started believing that Guma and Carrier were actually like, you know, the real deal, that they're playing on form, which wasn't really the case in Summer. I think Summer was probably the worst that Guma has played, and I would say that going into Worlds, Guma was probably considered their worst player, but now I think he's in conversation for being one of their best players. Like all the mistakes that he used to have that were core to his gameplay, the reason why people would never rate him, if you look at like any of the top 580 carries, like you look at Core JJs, you look at Kadrils, you look at mine, the reason why none of us have Guma in our top 5, even though he has definitely like the potential to be even one of the best AD carries in the world, is because of like the tendencies that he had that were so negative for his team. He was the guy that you were really afraid to put resources into because he could randomly into team fight. He could get caught you know, in mid game when he's holding mid in like the 1-3-1, and now you don't see those types of mistakes happening. It feels like he's never caught. It felt like Hope was really the guy that was just getting caught out nonstop in the series. Yep. So I think that Guma has been like just super solid, and the fact that now he's like ultra reliable, which was always the main like stain on his gameplay. Now that that's removed, it feels like, you know, T1 is just in god mode.
Yep. Nelson, thoughts on the semi-final?
I mean, I think it was more on JDG's side where they didn't play well, especially Hope and Missing, where they didn't know how to contest mid-section of the map in mid-game. And this has always been like this part, like a stronger suit of T1, where they have tendency to play on 2 lanes more, or even 1 lane, to take control of the map and then look to snowball. And I've seen like JDG, the entire team just ignore their own AD carry, run to River, try and control River, and then Hope is stuck in mid lane and just dies. And I mean, in my opinion, I think it's the team's fault, but of course it's also the AD carry's fault, because he should know how to contest midsection, because there are so many teams in LPL where they contest midsection very aggressively, and they shouldn't be surprised that T1 does the same.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, Hope was someone we're ragging on a little bit, you know, quarters or even in group stage. Hope and Missing's lane was highlighted in Summer. There was a lot of improvement from Missing, and he kind of got back to square one where he was in 2019. And it's a shame that they showed up the way they did. But I will say, in positive light, while we are talking about JDG, Nelson, I think there is something to be said about 369, who throughout the whole series was trying to carry a lot of these games on his back, no?
I mean, he showed throughout the series that, or at least him and Kanavi, they played better around in top side. And with the lead, he tries to snowball or carry the team, but I think he didn't have the best of drafts. And I think their bot lane made too many mistakes in the mid game, because I think laning phase was close for bot lane. It's just that, you know, one jungler decided to spend more time bot side, one decided to spend more time farming and ganking top side. But I think there are like too many crucial mistakes, especially in mid game, from Hope and Missing for 369 to do anything. But I think it was an effort to be proud of, because I think he kind of gapped Zeus the entire series.
Yeah, I think that's completely fair. Dom?
I feel similarly. I thought 369 was playing well. I still think Zeus is really insane. I mean, I think that these were these two guys in Breathe, those three were the best top laners at this Worlds, in my opinion. I don't think Dorian and Kingin were even playing the same game that Zeus and 369 were topside. Like, I just don't even think the lane phase looked remotely similar. I mean, I think the one knock on the top side, I mean, would be that, you know, when they did have some of those advantages, if your bot side is getting like railed, you don't really have the opportunity to make mistakes. Like, you don't have the it's just not possible to make those mistakes. And you know, like when they threw back, when, you know, Kanavi tried to dive the turret, he gives a shutdown and he doesn't get the kill, and then Zeus gets the wave on top. Like, those types of mistakes are just not going to be good enough if your bot lane's not playing amazingly. And I think it was a little bit unfortunate because the one game where, because it felt like in lane phase, Missing and Hope were getting better at that matchup throughout the series. Like, game one, it was like not great, you know, like they didn't play as well as you'd expect. Game two, they like traded kills, but in like a positive way, because the AD got the gold. I know Nami getting the gold is not the worst thing for Lucian Nami lane, but it looked like a little bit better. And then in game three, it actually looked like they were about to get like a very clean solo kill, or they did get a very clean solo kill, and then Faker roams down and kills two. Which, I mean, I don't think that's an intentional death from Gumayushi. There's no reason that you'd tank that death just because you have mid push. Like, if anything, you just wait for your mid laner to get there and then make the play. So it just sucks that it sucks for Hope and Missing that by the time they actually started getting the upper hand in that lane, which I think when played at peak level can be Lulu Aphelios favored over the Lucian Nami, they just, you know, they had Faker somehow getting a roam timer over Azir. So, yeah.
So what did T1 do so well then, Dom? Because you inclined that, you know, Faker was having a bit of diff in mid.
Yeah.
I want to go into the in depth of like what made T1 quite potent in this series. You know, outside of bot being volatile for JDG's side, hit me up with mid a little bit.
I mean, I think mid was the defining factor. I thought that going into it, like Yagawa and Faker were going to be like really close in skill, and it was going to be just whoever had the better game. Maybe I had it like 52-48 for Yagawa, like very close. But I was really surprised that when Yagao was on the Azir, he wasn't able to control the lane at all versus Faker's Rise, because generally when you see that matchup, like, if the Rise wants to push, I mean, he can, but he'll have to like trade HP and mana for it, and like it's normally hard for Rise to get like free roam timers. Normally, if you're roaming, that means that you're like dropping a wave or you're losing a plate, like there's going to be some type of consequence. But it felt like Faker was just playing the lane better. I mean, you can't really see because there's no pro view and like they're not really panning to mid much, but you just see the results of it, and it's like, how could this have transpired without like some mistakes happening in lane, which is the part I love about watching professional League of Legends. You don't actually get to watch all the lanes, so you just have to make like educated guesses based on what you see on the minimap as to like what is actually happening in the lane. But I assume that Faker was just playing the lane phase better than Yagao in order to like open up those opportunities for himself.
Yeah, I feel like with Faker, you kind of had that instinct as well. But also, with how we saw Faker moving around the map, feel like he's having one hell of a series. Nelson, is that what made the difference for you? Or is there another lane that, in particular,
I mean,
you know,
I think
you kind
mid,
of look at for T1?
I think mid and jungle for sure, especially when Owner was spending so much time on the bot side, and they couldn't. I would say their laning phase, Home and Missing, their laning phase was okay, but I think the difference was the jungler, which made the matchup swing the other way. And yes, I mean, for mid section, I think Azir against Ryze, Azir should always have like HP advantage. He should call his teammates, either the jungler, top lane, support, to try and pressure Ryze, so that when Ryze has no flash, you know, he can't really push.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's a playstyle which JDG is very familiar with. So this, and of course, you know, Kanavi as the jungler, he has the option to choose what to do, and looks like he chose the wrong option this playoffs, or this series.
Well said. All right, that's first series down. Semi-finals on the bottom side of the bracket. With JDG being knocked out, we have two more Korean teams with Gen G versus DRX. And Nelson, I do want you to start this one off, because I think coming into this, all of us kind of agreed that, look, it looks like Gen G favored, you know, no matter who comes on that side of the bracket. At some point, we did expect it to be EDG favored, then DRX get through. But I have to say that, I mean, DRX came through, and since we're just talking about mid laners, holy moly, like Zeka's lane has been something that's been getting better and better with Worlds, and I feel like it's something that needs to be highlighted, considering his lane opponent and considering the team he's going up against, where he has so much confidence.
I mean, I think Zeka has been playing extremely well, but I think the person I would like to highlight would be Kingen.
Go for
I
it.
mean, also another player, who did play on BLG before in the LPL, and I think
Yeah.
I would say he completely outperformed Duran the entire series in a way that he knows his role. He knows that the two tanks they're all useless. They're all useless. So he runs around. He runs around and sets up for his team while Doran is like trying to get all the CS, which
Yeah.
I mean it's fine if you're playing a carry champ, but I think throughout the series, where it's like Ornn, Gragas, Sejuani, it looks like Kingen was like very aware on what to do, like on what's happening on other lanes on the map, and he just didn't care about his own lane and help his teammates, which I think is the right play to do if you're on tank v tank.
True. He's a good role player. Dom, in this series, what kind of struck you first?
I was really surprised by Zika's lane phase versus Chovy, because Chovy's whole thing has always been, and like the reason why I had him number one coming into this tournament in terms of all mid laners would be like the fact that he's just a better laner than all other laners. Like he just was able to accrue CS advantages, get HP advantage, get prio in lanes like 1v1. Like he doesn't need help to like if there's a matchup where he's supposed to get push or he has an advantage in terms of like range or something, it feels like he's always just going to win his lane. So I was really surprised to see him like losing lanes to Zika. Like I was really surprised to see that type of advantage, because I feel like it's really uncharacteristic for Chovy to be losing 1v1. I can't even remember like the last time that I saw him just like straight up lose 1v1. So that was really interesting to me. I mean, I think Zika's just having an insane tournament. I feel like he's doing what I thought Knight was gonna do. I thought that Knight was gonna be the guy that was gonna like take the world by storm with the Sylas and Akali, but Knight goes out in group stage and Zika's the guy who's going to finals playing Akali and Sylas. Even in bad matchups, it's like, you could take your Azir, I'm gonna take my Sylas or my Akali, and I'm just gonna like lane semi evenly, maybe beat out a little bit of CS, and then I'm just gonna start like running over the map later on. So yeah, I mean, I think that Zika's just having an insane time. And then yeah, I was really surprised by the way that Gen G played. I don't know what happened to Gen G between LCK and Worlds, because I mean, I don't know one analyst from LCK that did not have Gen G as the strongest Korean team coming into this tournament. I didn't see one person say that there was another team that was close to as good as Gen G. Except for like Redditors now after Gen G, lost. Then now everyone knows that Gen G was bad the whole time.
Now
Yeah,
they're
exactly.
right.
But I mean like credible people that actually like have to like stand on their word. I don't know anyone that actually thought that Gen G was actually going to lose to any of these teams. I mean, even domestically, like they wiped the floor. Like if you watch the Gen G versus DRX series, this is something that I did after the games, because I watched those series originally when they happened. I was like, what actually happened in these regular season matches, the best of threes between Gen G and DRX? Gen G just on them. Like it wasn't even close. Yeah. So somehow DRX got way better around objectives, and their like laning is now able to I mean, at least be comparable to Gen G's laning. So I was really surprised by that. I mean, it's hard to know if DRX is playing like significantly better or like Gen G is playing significantly worse. I think DRX might be playing slightly better and Gen G might be playing slightly worse. But a lot of the things that I think normally take a lot of times for teams to figure out, like setups around objectives, like people knowing, like coordinating their bases, coordinating their vision, like understanding the like minor points of like how you're going to attack an objective based on your team comp, if you want to turn, if you need to pull it, if you need to engage, like who's going to engage first, like all those types of things. I feel like teams work like years to get to like that level of understanding around an objective. So it's so weird to see Gen G that were super dominant at that, and DRX that were kind of like lackluster in comparison domestically, that now DRX is so much like they're so much more comparable around objectives. It feels like their decision making is so much more crisp. So I have no idea how that happened.
I mean, I didn't watch like the domestic games, but from what I see on this series, it's like it felt like Gen G didn't know how to play around objectives especially with like the Azir comps, because it just didn't make sense that they are all clumped up in the pit or in river.
Yeah, they're not holding chokes.
Yeah, when they're playing complete front to back, and it was quite surprising. And then it was easy, for DRX.
Because I think at one point we were talking a lot about the meta shift with Gen G, and was saying, well, how does it favor them coming into Worlds? So what you're both now telling me is we can't use the meta discussion or excuse for this series. We are genuinely talking about 5v5 setup these neutral setups in particular, and how Gen G's playing, right, Nelson?
Yeah, yeah, I agree. But I think even for Zika, right? I don't think he was like as weak as what people kind of all try to say, because he has always been good on.
Yeah.
I would say like every split he has been good on 3 champions, and he could match up with anyone on 3 champions. And if you put him off these champs, he doesn't play as well. But no one has actually tested his champion pool yet, so I'm not super sure. Because I expected Gen G to test it, but they didn't. They ignored it, and we just have to see if T1 would do it.
On melee assassins, on those melee picks, like his Akali looks clean as hell. I remember Zeker in the LPL, you said the same thing. It was like LeBlanc and Zoe at the time, I think at one point. And you're saying, well, why is no one taking him off of these champions? It's happening all over again. That lower bracket was a big surprise. And quickly, just to wrap it up, Dom, for DRX and Gen G, was the standout of this series, was it mid? Or is there someone else you'd rather look at? Because I feel like in different games, we had, a beautiful Deft game coming through as well. I think, as Nelson said earlier, Kingen was playing his role and had some incredible Ornn engages too. Who was your biggest standout overall in the 4-game series?
My biggest standout, it has to be Zika. If you want to go negative, like I know Nelson likes to take like the meta, he takes the question to make it as negative as possible. So I'm gonna, if I were to do that, I would say Peanut. Like Peanut Graves was like, that was an exceptional Graves in the worst way possible. I've never seen a Graves that looked that uncomfortable in a game. It was tough. So that would be the negative one. But yeah, I think you got to give it to Zika. Zika was just smurfing. I don't know. He's too good.
Nelson, do you want to shout on anyone while we're here?
Not really, but I would say I think Beryl played. I think Beryl played extremely well, actually, especially in Game 5 on the Braum. Nice. He landed so many clutch. Like he tanked the perfect amount of damage. Escaped to the team fight with like 10 health, and then managed to hit like 4 man-hours, 5 man-hours, and I think Beryl played extremely well. And he's also like probably one of the players we should have to target in draft, because I don't think Kara played a good Heimerdinger the last time I saw it. Because he was playing,
it wasn't close to as good. He
was playing team fights as if he was a mid laner, just using like the RW, using the missiles, which I was like, whoa, didn't make sense.
Use RE, please.
If you used RE, he could like hit five people, but he just needed to do the damage.
Yep. That leads us perfectly into our finals, because now we're stuck with T1 and DRX. Again, I've said it multiple times. It's an LCK versus LCK final. We're back to LCK dominance. And for a 4th seed to make it this far was already impressive enough. Now, like, where are we sitting on this one? And what do you think are the strongest elements? Dom, I want to start with you, because T1 have shown us that, as talked about, like Guma, Carrier, their laning phase has stepped up. They've solidified and become a little bit more consistent, especially Guma Yushi, as we know. We're looking at FAKER is still in grand form. Owner as well, who is challenging Kanavi. And Zaze has still been one of the top-tier top laners in the tournament. So this seems like a very strong T1 going into finals.
Yeah, I think it's massively T1 favored. I just don't really know how DRX is going to gain an advantage. I thought in the last series versus Gen G, though, that it was going to be massively Gen G favored. So it seems like DRX is good at rising to the occasion. Maybe it won't end up being a 3-0, which is what like my brain tells me it should be, like T1 3-0, like stomps, not even close matches. That's what my brain tells me when I watch both teams play. But when you see like how DRX is resilient, maybe they're able to, cook up something interesting. I just feel like it's very, very difficult to draft against T1 if you're DRX, and I think it's very easy for T1 to draft against DRX. So on T1 side, I think that if they just remove like the carrying mid laners, they remove the Silas Akali, they don't entertain that matchup at all, and they stick to their Ryze. If Ryze is out, they play like a FAKER who just plays Azir. Even if he plays Galio, I just think he just tries to neutralize mid matchup, and then you also just ban Heimerdinger, and I think you're fine. I don't really think that they need to care about the Aatrox in this series. Like, I don't think you have to care about Kingen's Aatrox the same way you have to care about 369 Aatrox, which is something that they were permabanning on both sides last series. I wouldn't give a f about Graves into Pioshik, so I don't feel like that's a permaban. And even the Caitlyn, which most people are banning, I think that might be banned against Guma Yushi every single time because he hasn't, got it the entire tournament. But I think that, like, if I was T1, my opening read would be give him the Caitlyn, and if anything, we just play like Varus into it or something like that. You opt into one of those lanes. So I think that would be a very hard way for DRX to draft around. So essentially like the main factors: ban Heimerdinger, ban out the Akali Silas. Or I guess on blue side you could ban one, pick one potentially. I'm not a huge fan of that because I think that maybe like FAKER's not the best compared to Zeke on those champions, so maybe you just ban both. And then ban both, ban the Heimerdinger, leave up Caitlyn, leave up Graves, leave up all those, and make DRX actually like win a game with one of the OPs in order to like change your draft strategy. I just think that Zeus will be fine if he plays in 10 Aatrox, if he plays this Fiora or like anything else.
Yeah, Nelson.
I mean, I think red side is kind of important. For both teams, because I think in an ideal world when they both play the bot side, I think it's very T1 favorite. I'm not sure what disgusting things Zeus will do to Kingen if they're left on 1v1. And I mean, I don't think Heimer is as big of a problem, but I think Heimerdinger with Ashe, I think that's very obnoxious, especially with Ashe E, you can almost never get ganked. And I even thought that it was one of the more important picks in like the early playoff series, you know, because I think Ashe has like decent laning to everyone. As long as there's no Silas on enemy side, I think she's one of the better AD carries right now because she can just build defensively as well. And yeah, for sure, I think if you can lock Zika out of Silas and maybe even Akali, if you have the enough ban positions, I think it's great. And if you have an extra one, it's probably banning out the Kindred. And for DRX, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how they want to win. Unless
maybe ban Ryze. Maybe ban Ryze.
Ben Ryze. Hope you get Silas Akali. Pray that T1 just picks a tank, and then that's your way to win.
It's interesting that it's coming down to draft that like there's so many options for T1. And I mean, looking at that team, it's actually quite obvious to see. So Nelson, would you give anything to DRX in this like best of 5 final? Do you think it's going to be one of the biggest stomps of a grand final that we've had in a while? Like,
I don't know. I don't think it would be a hard stomp because I think T1 has shown to pick or draft very loosely, especially in game ones, where they just want to see like what the enemy has prepared. So I think there's a chance for DRX to take like one game, but I find it hard for them to win because unless T1 handshakes like let's play tank versus tank and then. And not ban any mid laners and Kindred, then but it is so many things have to happen in a row for DRX to win, I think.
Okay. Well, that's hard to sell. Dom, is there anything further that you think could give DRX an edge? Because obviously I'm looking for the DRX angle, considering there's a lot of T1 fans out there. I've already looked at the pick'ems. T1's like almost at 85-86% or something. I think it's massively one-sided that people are, coming out to support T1. Is there anything for DRX that you could see that would, maybe give them more of an edge?
I think it's tough. I mean, I think they have to come with a creative draft angle, or they need to just they need to be able to like pick like Ornn on 3 and then ban out like counter picks or something. Maybe you ban out Fiora, Camille, and you take like the Ornn on 3 and you try to get like some type of like advantage from tank matchup. I just feel like DRX are so limited and like T1 can do almost anything at this point. So that's what makes it really hard for me to see how DRX wins. But then again, I mean, I thought that like domestically it felt like Gen G was just a better version of DRX. So yeah, I mean, we're just at a different tournament, and I mean, who knows? Maybe T1, maybe the pressure could get to them. The fact that they're like considered overwhelming favorites, right? Like it shouldn't even be close. I mean, I'm surprised it's even 85. Like I would assume that it would be like 90 or 100%, like 90, 95, something like that towards T1. So, yeah, I mean, maybe the pressure can get to them. Maybe like sometimes being such like a huge favorite on paper can make teams play worse.
True. Underdog factor for DRX as well, especially. I mean, they've made it this far. They've done more than a 4th seed ever could. I think that alone is showing the strength of LCK this year, showing that they are the strongest region. I mean, this year, is it fair to say? Like, could LPL's come through one MSI
this summer.
This summer.
Yeah.
Okay, Nelson. All right.
Yep. Well, I mean, this is the thing that sucks about professional League of Legends is you get like one tournament per year that people actually care about. I mean, like Asian teams care about MSI, like LCK and LPL, they pride themselves on MSI. I don't give a about MSI. Like, so To me, it's like there's one tournament a year that matters, and then that tournament has like just a format, so it just makes it really, really difficult to like enjoy pro league, because the reactions are just so crazy from the fans. Like now people are just calling like Chovy super overrated. Like there's like a huge discussion about why like why Chovy and Knight are so overrated. It's like, wait, so like Chovy was better than like Zika the entire year up until this moment, but like sure, this matters more. Like this counts more for Zika than Chovy like being better in summer. But how does everything Chovy's done up until this point, how does that not count at all? For like, that's the thing that I don't understand, is like,
dude,
how people get so like overrated and underrated from like one tournament. It's not, I don't know, it just seems weird.
It's going to be like the same thing as like, you know, you guys before, you both put Rookie in your LPL, you know, your 5-man team. It's going to be people in the comments being like, but Rookie didn't even make Worlds. I mean, I know this is like a different level of discussion, but it's still within the same confounds of, well, all year long, you see this quality performance, and whether they go out at Worlds early, whether they don't make it at all, or whether they fall short of expectations, then people start ragging on them because they don't do exactly what the fans wanted them to do. And it's kind of not fair, considering that, yeah, double Elim would be good. Double Elim would be good. And I think after this year, hopefully there's a lot of hearing coming through for the people that organize the format that can maybe influence that a little bit. Gentlemen, this is the last episode, of course. We're going into grand finals. That's happening on the 5th of November, 6th for me. I'm going to go see it in the cinemas in Sydney and George Street. Are you guys doing anything special for World Finals? Are you either going to the venue or are you going somewhere special to watch it? Nelson, what are you doing?
I would be on a plane, so I wouldn't be able to catch it live. But I mean,
buy the Wi-Fi.
I hope it's enough. I hope the Wi-Fi is enough. But at this time zone, I think it's a bit hard. It's been rough to watch Worlds live this year.
Yeah, I mean, can you tell us what country now? Because Japan was the mystery before. Are you still in Japan?
Yeah, I'm still there.
Okay, and then where are you going, if you don't mind asking?
I'm going back to Berlin.
Germany. Oh, cool. All right. Okay, well, look, we can speculate there, even though we probably know what you're doing next. Dom, what are you doing for Worlds? Anything special?
No, nothing. I will be just watching. I'll just be watching it. I'll be live viewing it, and I've been like in the middle of just taking a break. I feel like the narratives have gotten so out of hand this year that like it's just been such a horrible experience watching this World Championship. I mean, normally Worlds it's weird, right? Because it's supposed to be like the most hype, but like every year I just think that Worlds is like one of like the worst times to be a content creator in the space. I talked to LS about this recently because recently, like obviously LPL had been winning, like, you know, I mean, they won like 3 out of the last 4 before this one. So every time that LPL won, it's just like a complete attack on him. And now when LCK wins, I guess because I have more fans now, it's like a complete attack on me. Yeah, it's just a complete attack. I mean, but what's weird is that there's like this level of cognitive dissonance where they won't be able to understand that, like, if you're going by the like idea that anyone who had a prediction that was wrong, then that person is a moron. Like if you have if that is like your line of reasoning, well then anyone who thought Chovy was better than Zika is also a moron and should shut up forever, right? Like that is like that is what you also have to do if you want to keep that same line of reasoning. But it seems like they're not like intelligent enough to like get there, or they just don't give a about like their own, like, you know, their own, like, I guess, stance within the scene. So I think that was like, I think this Worlds has just been like, it's been such a grueling experience, even from play-ins. I mean, this was just a complete show. It's like impossible to enjoy the results when upsets happen, because it feels like if an upset happens and you didn't predict the upset, it's like they're coming for you. That's just how it feels.
Yeah. Maybe you just need to make the tweet, you know, in reply to the Church of Chovy guy.
I blocked him. That guy was. I mean, I can't even understand that level of hypocrisy. It's just too crazy.
You need a Chovy accountability thread.
Chovy accountability thread.
I don't envy what you guys go through, or you, especially Dom, being the limelight. I'm just a monkey play-by-play, and that means every prediction is looked at like I'm wearing clown shoes all the time. Makes it easy. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure chatting with you and hearing your thoughts on Worlds. You're both looking at T1 pretty positively here for the grand final. I have locked in DRX, by the way, into my pick'ems, because Hail Mary, dude. You've got LPL, like 3x LPL players thrown into the middle. A Kindred player while I'm trying to learn the hell out of Kindred. It's pretty easy for me to attach myself. Dom, thank you so much for hosting this as well, by the way, on your channel. And Nelson for flying across the world while doing this at the same time. You've done this show now from 2 different countries.
Yep.
And if we went another week, it would have been 3. So thank you again, gentlemen. And an absolute pleasure for Worlds Talk. We'll enjoy the show alongside you guys. And thank you once again for tuning in. And make sure you press the bell on Dom's channel down below and comment as well. But we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.